Living with chronic pain, as many of our listeners know all too well, it can be a really isolating experience. It can also be a really difficult thing to talk about. And why is it isolating and why is it difficult to talk about? Well, because when you live with an invisible disease, disorder, condition, it can be really hard for people to understand what it is you're going through. It can also be really hard to communicate what an invisible experience feels like to live with. So not long ago, Jana Kimmel reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got this project going on. I'd love to talk to you about it." So in researching it a little bit further, I was really excited to dive into a conversation with Jana about her awesome initiative. Jana is the founder and executive director of the Chronic Pain Project, a nonprofit dedicated to raising awareness about chronic pain through art and storytelling. This innovative project emerged from Jana's unique blend of design expertise, passion for health and healing, and extensive experience in qualitative research. With over 20 years of experience conducting product research for healthcare companies, including Providence, Regions Blue Cross Blue Shield, Dexcom, and Hinge Health, Jana brings a deep understanding of patient needs to her work. Her academic background, combining a master's degree in industrial design from Georgia Tech with a BA in theater from Indiana University, provides a strong foundation for her multidisciplinary approach to healthcare advocacy and awareness. Jana's earlier career in theater and costume design adds a creative dimension to the project, making it a true culmination of her diverse skills and passions. Her commitment to community service is evidenced by her past board membership at Rose Villa Retirement Community during a significant expansion phase, and her long-standing volunteerism with Dress for Success and other organizations. Originally from Chicago, Jana now calls Portland home, where she lives with her husband and their cat, Princess Savannah. When not capturing moving stories of people's healthcare experiences, Jana can be found hiking the local trails or at home expressing her creativity through crochet and art making. And what better way to really find a way to communicate your pain than tapping into your creative brain? Thank you so much for being here, Jana. I really appreciate you being with us today on the Chronic Pain Experience podcast.
Thank you, Dina, so much for having me and squeezing me in on your podcast.
I did have a look at your website. Looks like you've got some really exciting things coming down the pipeline for you. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your chronic pain project?
I would be happy to. Thanks for asking. So the Chronic Pain Project came about through some of my lived experience. And since probably the age of 10, I've been dealing with some chronic pain, last 30 years or so, chronic migraines, and all of those things are they're very invisible. People don't look at me and say, "Oh, you look like somebody that's in pain, or you might need some help." There were times that I was on crutches. I've certainly broken an arm, broken a leg. And at those times, people see you, and I think weirdly, particularly of airplanes, people see you and go, "Oh, how can we help?" Or if you're trying to get through a door and you're on crutches.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is people like myself and many others who are living with chronic pain are walking around with this pain, but people in the rest of the world may not know that. And so they don't know how to help you. They don't know that you might need to be listened to. They don't know that there's a conversation to be had. It's not like, "Oh, you broke your arm. What happened?"
Mm-hmm.
It's, "Oh, you've had back pain for 10 years. How you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
So the project is meant to lift up those voices, bring us together as a community of people with chronic pain, and then using art help tell the stories of those people living with chronic pain.
Oh, perfect. And I think the important parts to be pulled from that, one of them being community. I love that. The invisibleness, if that's a word. And we're going to dive into that today because I think that's a really important part of the conversation. And also just the whole idea of art being a healing modality. So we're going to dive into it a little bit more. So can you tell me a little bit about how this project came about, other than your own story? I know you live with pain. I know you have a full-time job, which we'll talk about later on as well. But what really inspired you to move on to this project?
The original inspiration was actually I was working at a company where we were designing products for people with musculoskeletal pain. And that's, again, think of your skeleton, your knees, your hips, your ankles, your back. And as a qualitative researcher, my job is to interview those folks and take those findings and help build a better product. But as we're doing that, and as our job as researchers is always to build the better product, but also help the folks who are designing those products to really build empathy, to understand the full lives and the full experience of these folks. And because the speed of business is fast, I thought, wouldn't it be really valuable to do something bigger, to really help our engineers, our designers understand the real lived experience, the full on, not just, oh, they can't press the button in the app, but I'm coming in with brain fog, and yesterday my doctor told me I'm not going to get better, or I need surgery, and all those things that, it's not necessarily their job to know that. And so I started thinking about doing a project around that. But again, corporate life, very, very busy. And
Right.
so I put it on the back burner mentally and physically, and then ended up leaving that job and taking that idea with me as something that I feel really passionate about continuing to do. The stories are worthy no matter where I'm at.
Ah, love it. Really, truly. I think, just diving back into the whole idea of the invisibility of it, anyone who lives with pain knows exactly what you're talking about. And I think, unfortunately, we need more people listening to a podcast, any podcast related to pain, to really understand truly what the lived experience is.
Yeah.
Just the other day, my husband lives with a rare metabolic disorder and often means pain.
Mhm.
And he just, we've been married for 26 years and I understand pain because I'm a pain specialist. And he said to me, I really just wish people could live in my skin, for a day, for 2 days, for a week.
Yep.
And I think essentially every chronic pain warrior, anyone who lives with pain, would probably say the same thing, right? And it is sad how uninformed our society really is.
And
Yeah.
Dina, you bring up a really good point, because my husband also lives with chronic pain, but he has chronic back pain. And so he doesn't understand my pain and I don't understand his, but at least we understand each other in the I need some extra care today, or this thing has been going on for a very long time. And it's not people who live with acute pain. It's like, oh, it hurts
Right,
really bad. It's going to hurt for 6 or 8 weeks and then it's
right,
gone.
right.
But 10 years, you wake up every single day and that pain is there.
Right.
That is hard. That is a whole different level of pain. And I think that's where that word chronic is just critically important for us to talk about.
Absolutely. And life altering, right? No one talks about how it alters your life and to what extent. And right. Can you just maybe give us a little bit of example of, since we're talking about just the invisibleness of, chronic pain, what was your experience like? What was sort of the tough, really tough things you experienced by living with an invisible disease, disorder, condition, whatever you want to call it?
I know, I think
All
we
of the
we
above.
lean on I lean on condition, but
Yeah.
any of those words works.
Okay.
Um, for me, honestly, originally at age 10, I fell in gym class.
Yeah.
I was in a lot of pain. My ankle never swelled. I was in a hospital for a couple days. I was on and off crutches for years,
Oh,
and the other kids couldn't see anything. All they saw was I was on crutches. So it looked like I was faking it. Thankfully, I had a very loving and caring family, and they helped take care of me. But and they believed me, which as I've done these interviews, I find out so much about gaslighting,
hmm.
particularly from providers, but it can also be from family.
Right.
So, that was definitely the hardest piece, was at that age. You're so tender and you're
Right.
still figuring out who you are. And then honestly, the last few years, as I've become an older female, and
Mm.
they said as you get older, the migraines would get better or worse, and mine got worse.
Oh, boy.
And it got to every couple days. And
Yeah.
not, as we talked about quality of life, right? You wake up in the morning, it's like, am I gonna be able to work today? Am I gonna be able to have those social plans today? Am I gonna be able to take care of my family or my pet today?
Yeah.
And so all of those things, you start to feel unreliable, which for me, I don't like that. I want to be reliable. People may stop inviting people to things if they don't think they have the capacity to participate. So all of those, there's a lot others, but those are the
Yeah,
two that kind of stick out personally.
for sure. And I think that anyone listening would resonate deeply with that because it is very, very common. And then all the emotions that come with it too, right? Whether it be, the shame, which is always so difficult to process, the guilt, and then, not being believed. And that's a big one. And actually, as a pain provider, we really see when people are not believing that they're getting the care that they need, that really influences the amount of pain you feel. And that's just one small angle, but right? I mean, we're really surrounded by so many different inputs of things that can amplify our pain. And I think it's important. I think your project is an important part of really bringing the conversation to the public, the general public, people who might not necessarily have thought to ask about chronic pain. When we talked the first time we met, we were talking a little bit about how good our chronic pain community is at really covering up how we truly feel or what our experience really is all about. Sometimes we might try and say it to pain providers, but we don't have the time necessarily. Do they have the time? And then living with it long enough and trying many different ways to communicate it, you kind of just shut down, right? And just not
Yeah.
say anything. So,
Yep.
in your experience, how have you maybe you have evolved, maybe it's changed for you now that I know your husband has also lived with pain. I'm assuming there's been some pretty good conversations, but what are you seeing, in and around you when it comes to chronic pain and people communicating or not communicating their pain?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really think that I personally befriended my chronic pain when I had an opportunity to work in an organization that focused on it. And I say that knowing that I've been in healthcare organizations for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And it was only at year like 17 that I felt comfortable really divulging who I was fully. Um, I sometimes liken it to coming out of the closet, that it's something that you just don't tell people because they judge you. For me personally, one of the biggest changes has been social media.
Mm.
And what social media has done is it has normalized, at least for the small group of us, maybe not for everyone, the conversations around chronic pain. When
Right.
I have a bad day and then I look online and I see all of these memes and all of these people saying, yay, I got out of bed today, right?
Mhm.
Or gee, I can't get out of bed today. And yep, it's another one of those days. And all of the things in between, that is incredibly normalizing. It is incredibly validating to see that you're not the only one struggling today.
Mhm.
This morning I actually saw like somebody at work had food poisoning and somebody else, their baby kept them up all night. So
Mhm.
even knowing those things sometimes just helps us know that nobody feels good all the time, but we forget that.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up, there were some really interesting conversations we had with folks, and some people would talk about their family being supportive. I, like myself, was very lucky to have that supportive family. Other people said, my family doesn't understand it so much, but I have a community, whether it's a social media community, it might be the person at the coffee shop that you talk to who says, yeah, this is actually something that I struggle with too, because it comes out in weird ways. Somebody who said her partner was vocally supportive because of the types of medications they were on and had to come off of some of those medications to do some other healing. The partner said, day to day, I see what you go through. I know this is real. You don't have to convince me of it. I know that you're not just sore. I know what you can be when you're most functional. So hearing that from our partners, oh my gosh, what a gift.
Right. So powerful and healing, like truly, biologically, those words have
Yeah.
influence on our biology. That's amazing. And so I think this probably is a good segue because I'm assuming those quotes you're pulling are those from some of the artists that are, or the participants that are coming into the, okay, good. So for our listeners, let's start to dig into what the Chronic Pain Project is all about.
Yes. So the Chronic Pain Project is about those sharing those feelings, right? Those invisible feelings. And there are a number of artists, Georgia O'Keeffe included, who talk about the fact that making art is a way to share that story in a way that you just can't always share it
Mm.
through words, through actions. We sometimes need pictures, right? We talk about a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Mhm.
So myself and a small board and a group of volunteers have come together to create this project. The project itself is taking kind of my qualitative research background and my design background and putting them together. And what we do is we reach out to folks again through our, right now it's kind of through our snowball sample community,
Mhm.
friends and friends of friends, and podcasts like yours that are highlighting this opportunity. We're bringing folks in for remote conversations, doing conversations very much like this, doing a lot of listening, right? Asking people to share their story. We collect video and or audio. We talk for about an hour the first time, and then folks go off and create a piece of art.
Mm.
And that art can literally be a line on a paper, or that art can be a very fully fleshed out piece of art, drawing, painting, sculpture, whatever.
Mhm.
All of those things are valid. They all tell a story. After they're done creating the art, they come back for about half an hour and we talk about what it was like to create that art, what got in the way of making that art, specifically around, your chronic pain. Did it change what you thought you were going to make? And for some people, it did. There's one woman in particular who was making something, and she said as she was doing these screen prints, her back started hurting more and more, and it kind of impacted what she ended up creating. So those stories are real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that particular piece will be culminating in an art exhibit in Portland, Oregon on September 28th, where we will have some of the artists,
Mhm.
lots of art, and an opportunity to have a small panel and a little conversation as well around chronic pain. This is a launch event, so it is a single night right now, but we're hoping to get some of this art into some local galleries, perhaps do similar events in other cities.
Mhm.
We'll be running workshops later in the year out of a performing arts center here in Beaverton, Oregon, and perhaps a book. So our real goal is to get this message out and to get the message out through art.
Oh, fantastic. Well, while you're sharing all of this, I'm in my brain thinking, I have a daughter who is in film production, and she just finished an important film. Last year's important was a big one. It was a big thing for her,
Mhm.
sharing her personal experience. And what I think is important is anyone who's going to view that art, whether it be a movie, whether it be, the pieces that your participants are making, is that there's that initial, view. You see it, you think it's cool. You might not understand necessarily the story behind it, but what I love about it is that you guys couple it with the story because it's really important for everyone to have that context because the
Yeah.
artist really sees so much more than we could ever see in that piece. And then once they start to explain, not only their process, but what it means to them and what the images are, how they're meaningful to them, that's just such a powerful combination. And I love what you guys are doing as a
Yeah.
result of that.
I'm so grateful to our videographer for putting together these stories. We have so many stories, and I wish we could tell all of them, but
Yeah.
to make impact, there'll probably be a 5 or 10 minute video at the event. But
Right.
in the future, I would love to get a YouTube channel together where we can really share some of these long form stories. And that's so cool that your daughter is doing that for whatever topic she's excited about. Just
Yeah.
telling that story is a true talent of its own.
Well, we love stories, right? As humans, it's such a part of our cultural, our socialization, everything. So good for you. And if anything, you are pulling the conversation away from Facebook, which just makes it bigger and more effective, more visual, more connection, and all part of that. That's all stuff that's important about pain. So here comes the nerdy part. So I apologize. Part of the reason for my podcast is, yes, to draw on these important conversations, to highlight some really cool events going on around chronic pain, but also I just want our listeners to understand just how big and broad pain is. And bear with me for a second. So we know that pain is biological, psychological, and social in nature. Biological because we see significant changes to our biology, particularly in the brain and the nervous system. Psychologically, because we know the deep emotions that come along with pain, life with pain, plus all the experience of the past, trauma, biases, all that stuff. We also have the social element, which is, of course, influencing pain, whether you're isolated from loved ones or just not able to connect with people because of the pain you feel. And what I love about your project, Jana, is that you're kind of pulling them all together. So art as a form of healing or a form of communication really taps into all of them. Biologically, we are tapping into our nervous system when we are connecting with people, sharing our story, but also creating, being in that creative side. Psychologically, you actually get to have those emotions on some sort of medium, whether it be paper, pen, lines, plaster, whatever. And then socially, being able to share your story, to be heard, this is just really powerful stuff. Yeah.
And I think you and I talked a little bit too about all of the research around the fact that just making the art is a way to reduce pain. There's a number of studies out there where they show the moments, the time that you are making art, your reporting of pain goes down, and it even goes down looking at art. So
Mhm.
just taking that time to be creative.
Yes.
I'm on a Slack group with a group of people with chronic pain, and one individual last week posted herself making jewelry and making ceramics, and she said, these are the 2 hours of the week that I'm not in pain.
Hmm.
And it was so powerful to just think through that and realize what our brains can do.
Yes.
It's so important, first of all, to know that the pain is real, right? If there's a signal of pain, that means that something's wrong.
Yeah.
But chronic pain may mean that signal is broken.
Yeah.
Not always, sometimes it's real.
Yeah.
But sometimes those neural pathways kind of over index on what happened for 2 months. It's happening for 12 months. And so figuring out what can I do and what does my biology or what does my provider need to do? And I try to be really careful because I never want to tell anybody that their pain is in their head, because
Right.
every time I've gone to a doctor, eventually there is a root cause.
Yeah.
And our brains do funny things. And so
Yeah.
we need to work that yin and that yang. We need to work the front of the house of
Yeah.
the healthcare system coming in, and the back of the house, what's our brain doing?
Right, absolutely. Oh, so very well said. And you're speaking my language because that's exactly the work that I do is, yeah, working with the nervous system. And you're right. I think the
Yeah.
challenge is we often get caught into one camp or the other when it comes to, you know, especially the messaging that's coming from perhaps our providers or the interpretation of it's all in my head. It is, pain is real. Your pain is absolutely real. It's just we now know that the nervous system and the brain are really a big, big part of the experience. Not all of it, like you said, but are definitely a part of it. And just that's where art therapy is just so powerful too, is really tapping into the whole nervous system thing. So, okay, thanks for nerding out with me. That was fun
Yeah.
about the
And thank
science.
you for the great work you do on that,
Oh,
on what we can do supporting ourselves, right? That's
oh
so important to
gosh,
have a
it
trusted
really
person
is.
to
If
talk to.
anything, I think it's both you and I are sort of trying to offer this sense of hope, right? That we don't have to get
Yeah.
stuck. So you gave some examples of some of the stories behind what the process was for some of your participants, what they said about their experience. Have you noticed any sort of real shifts with people who, your participants? What sort of things are they seeing coming through a process like the Chronic Pain Project?
Great. So I have some actual notes in front of me, some from some of the participants. And one person talked about like the texture on the canvas, and like there's red from another layer, and then there's another layer that's representing my migraine, another one, my gallbladder, purples and blues and greens from bruises, which I thought was really interesting, using some graphite in there. She talked about having some financial limitations because of pain. So, that just makes it harder. Sometimes it makes it harder for people to participate at all. So at some point we hope to be able to help with art supplies. And then I'm going to read you the notes from one other participant who said, I asked her when she knew how the work would be done, and she said, when it stops yelling at me.
Oh,
We have work to do, or I need to set a boundary or stop by a certain date. But I love, when the work stops yelling at me, and, her success is measured by these completed projects. And so I know I completed it, but I can come back when I have to. She said she did take some breaks while she was making the art. And this individual is having some, I believe, some like significant menstrual pain. And I don't have the quotes in front of me, but a number of people, oh, here, she said she enjoyed doing it. She felt very self-directed. She could go at her own pace. And
Mhm.
what we hear a lot, and what she said in particular, I thoroughly enjoyed talking about my process with you. And then what we hear is I enjoy, having somebody who can listen, having somebody to take the time and giving myself, the artist, the participant, giving themselves permission to go inside and really feel those feelings and put them on a page somewhere and know that, again, they will be heard and they will be seen.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Those are probably two of the most powerful things that this project brings forward. What I also love is that you're really inviting people, it looks like, to create their own unique art piece based on their own story. And just like pain, everyone's story is very unique, very different. And so I think this just speaks to that individuality really, really well.
Definitely, definitely. And we have different means of communicating too. You have your Canadian accent, I have my American accent. Somebody uses pencils, somebody uses marker, somebody uses paint. And all of those media, all of the different things we bring to the moment, it's just different. No two people experience pain the same way, and no two people are going to explain their pain the same way.
Right. Oh, well said. Okay, now on the note of pain, I am most impressed that you are working full time and putting on this chronic pain project, pulling it all together. So, in your experience, what's your experience been like so far? How are you doing all of this with your pain?
In some ways, it's not the smartest thing I've ever done. In some ways, it's the best thing I've ever done. I am happy to say that through the pharmaceutical organization, my migraines have significantly reduced over the last few months. And that's given me a little bit more energy. Talking to the participants,
Hmm.
every time I get to do an interview, it gives me energy.
Right.
I'm actually passing off a lot of the interviews now. We have another researcher involved and she's running those. I'm not going to say it's, I think running the project isn't a problem overall because it's kind of this long-term vision. But as you know, when you have an event, if
Yes.
you're getting married, if you're having a baby,
Right.
those events take time. And so this art event is my baby right now, and
Yep.
it's taking time.
Hmm.
But I also was raised in a family where my mother was an Energizer bunny, and so I I don't do well sitting in front of a TV at night, and
Right.
so I like having something else to focus on. And so this gives me something that feels good, something that I'm super passionate about. And, selfishly, I've made an amazing community for myself. I've
Yes.
met all these wonderful people. I have a reason to talk to amazing people like you. And although it drains my cup sometimes energetically, it absolutely fills my cup to be connecting with people on this topic.
Wow. And I wouldn't even say selfishly, I would say strategically. Like you are doing, it's always an important line to find, right? Between doing things that are really meaningful to you, things that you really
Yeah.
enjoy, that really dial down that pain, to obviously, not overdoing it where we're, trying not to ramp up that pain too much. But it sounds like you're finding a balance. At least I'm hoping. I'm sure there's days where you just want to crash and do nothing. But here we are on a podcast, so I'm extra impressed that you've got a full day ahead of you. So thank you so much, Jenna. First of all, for bringing this to my attention. Secondly, to bringing it to our listeners' attention. How can our listeners learn more about it? Maybe see some of the work that's been done, some of the stories that are bringing forward.
Thank you for asking. They can go, all of the information you need is at chronicpainproject.org, and that's all one long word, chronicpainproject.org. And if you go to the events page, there are links there for tickets.
Mhm.
If you go to the gallery page, you can see some of the amazing art.
Mhm.
And if you click on the amazing art, we have pulled more quotes. So some of those quotes that I was sharing today, as well as many others, so you can really get to know those artists.
Mm.
And we also have, probably as you do, Dina, a set of resources. We have a monthly newsletter, And if anybody is called to, we have a donation button. So all
Oh,
of those things are available on the main website. So please take some time and wander around. And if you are remote, at least please enjoy the gallery of all of these artists have taken a significant amount of time and energy to participate.
yes, fantastic. Before we let you go, is there anything you want to offer to our listeners? Anything that's related to your own personal story or the stories you're seeing from these participants, just to give them a sense of hope or anything that comes to top of mind before we go?
I really do think the hardest thing is to keep going, but that is what we have to do. There are days that I don't want to. There are, again, see people on Instagram where it's like, this is all too much.
Mhm.
Let it be too much that day.
Mhm.
Take that break, right? And I would tell this to myself 100 times if I could. Take that break.
Yeah.
It's going to be better tomorrow. And give yourself that time to rest, that time to regroup. It'll be better tomorrow. And then to keep looking for answers. I do think that sometimes we stop. We've talked to one or two people. We don't feel like there's an answer.
Mm.
I saw an incredible post. Sorry, this is a very long answer to your question.
No, okay.
I saw an amazing post last week from a father who's had two children with chronic health issues. And he put that information, he had 10 years of their health records, which his provider didn't have. He had saved them,
Wow.
put them into AI,
Mm.
and AI kind of said, here's some ideas of next steps.
Wow.
So use the technology, use your network, not use your network,
Yeah.
keep looking and keep trying because there really should be some relief out there. So don't get discouraged. And when you do get discouraged, give yourself that time, but
Yeah.
then come back out swinging.
Absolutely. Stay open, stay curious. And if I could just for a second, I'm sorry, I don't like to plug my services on these podcasts because it's not about me, but you just segued into it perfectly. There are people other than myself, obviously there's lots of
Yes.
people who are really passionate about really closing that gap because it's really difficult. And I find as far as my experience living with intermittent pain, but more importantly as a provider, it's just difficult because you have to get out there and you have to find that information. We're trying to pull it all together so that you're not having to throw spaghetti against the wall. And there are people doing really good work out there. Just stay curious. And I love your message, Anna. Thank you so much today for, sharing all of this work that you've been doing and this incredible project. So I really encourage our listeners to go check out the Chronic Pain Project. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Dina.